The researchers investigating the Titanic shipwreck noticed something strange. The front part of the ship was in relatively good condition at the bottom of the sea, while the rear part was in a much worse state and lay 2,000 feet away. Despite being submerged for 100 years, which would typically corrode iron and steel, there was a significant difference in the condition of the front and rear parts of the ship if they both sank at the same time. Researchers believe that on the night of the accident, something other than the collision with the iceberg caused more damage to the rear part of the Titanic. But what was it? On the fateful night in 1912, the Titanic was alone in the dark sea, about 700 kilometers away from Newfoundland, Canada. Out of the 2,240 people on board, 1,500 lost their lives. What was deemed unsinkable succumbed to the forces of nature and sank into the dark ocean. The only eyewitnesses were those who managed to escape the ship and jump into the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean. The first rescue ship, RMS Carpathia, arrived 1.5 hours after the Titanic sank, fortunate to have received the Titanic's emergency message. Otherwise, the fate of those fighting for their lives in the cold waters would have been unknown, and the details of the Titanic disaster might have remained a mystery. Initially, no one knew what had happened to the ship, but survivors later revealed the collision with an iceberg. This was confirmed by the iceberg at the scene, which still had the Titanic's red paint on it. The investigation report stated that the iceberg tore a 300-foot hole in the right side of the Titanic, about 1/3 of the entire side. However, eyewitnesses claimed it took about 2.5 hours for the ship to sink. Investigators believe that if the iceberg had indeed torn a 300-foot hole, the ship should have sunk in minutes, not hours. To uncover the truth, the Titanic needed to be found. After 73 years, when the wreckage was finally discovered, it was a breakthrough for the marine industry. It was time to answer the questions left behind by the Titanic. The wreckage, lying in 4,000 meters of water in the Atlantic Ocean for decades, was investigated through numerous expeditions and countless photographs. Oceanic explorer Robert Ballard, who visited the wreckage over 30 times, never saw a 300-foot hole. Instead, a 30-foot area in the profile photo of the Titanic indicated an impact covering only 11 feet, through which about 370 gallons of water could enter the ship per second. This rate of flooding meant the ship could have filled with water in 2.5